Hello Chassos, welcome to another video where we are going to be doing a spotlight onto some of the Kroot units that are going to exist within Auxiliary Carter, and this is even relevant for some of the units within Kroot Hunting Pack. But the new detachment is here and it is showing some very, very promising early results. I wonder who could have predicted that, which is, you know, really strange because it's almost like there was somebody who was saying this detachment was really good from the start and had a bunch of very obnoxious people screaming about how it was terrible and it was awful and it was whatever else. Anyway, enough of me being a shit-headed idiot. Today, we're going to be looking at three units in particular: the Kroot Lone Spear, the Trail Shaper, and the Kroot Rampages. All for different reasons, but they do have interconnected play with each other. And there's a good reason why these units are going to show up in a lot of different lists. Arguably the Trail Shaper less, but there is some tech available with him that will make him a very interesting inclusion into a number of different lists that want to prioritize board control. Before we get into the video, I just want to say a massive thank you to all of my patrons who make all of my videos possible. If you would like to support the channel, you can stick around to the end of the video to find out how you can support us from as little as $5 US a month. So let's first talk about our Trail Shaper. And there are a number of overlapping things that allow us to do some pretty interesting stuff. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to look at is the trail finding ability, which gives them a little bit of safety in a reactive move. This can be incredibly powerful, especially because you've moved a unit out to get within 9 inches for your detachment rule, and then when a unit gets close enough to you, you position yourself in a way where you can just pop over a wall. Cool, can't shoot me. I've got a unit for the next turn. But the second part of it is the big one, and that is where after both players have deployed their armies, before you find out who goes first, you redeploy this model's unit and one other Kroot unit on the board. Now, when doing so, any of these can be placed into strategic reserve. Now, I want to call out here that it was my rules lawyer, Rain, who first pointed this out to me, but as soon as they did, it absolutely just clicked into place and made sense, and was really cool to have a little bit of tech back. Now, obviously, it's not as good as Trail Shaper's pre-nerf, where we could do it after the go first roll, but that's the state the game's in with all redeploys in the game so far. Now, where this becomes incredibly interesting is you can, for 15 points, give them Student of the Kauyon, which allows you to pick 3 units which are Kroot Carnivores or Kroot Fast Stalkers, and redeploy them, potentially putting them in strategic reserve. Now, why this is so big is, and I've shown this off a bunch of times, I'll do it again in this video, but Fast Stalkers can screen out basically the entire board. And I don't mean that as an exaggeration. I mean that if you get Defender, and very often you will be taking Defender if you get the option to, you put stuff in the middle, and ordinarily we would expect those Fast Stalkers to die, but now you have an ability to pull them back up. Let me swap over to TTS and I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, so here we are. This is a coaching game that I was having against one of my awesome patrons. Shout out to my Pantheon tier members. If you would like to get coaching from me in abundance every single month, as well as a bunch of other stuff, check out our Patreon. But we were setting this up, and yes, for anybody who is looking at the other side of the board, yes, I have embraced our Necron Overlords, which I, for one, am just so happy are going to be controlling our lives and looking after us, because I love my patrons more than I love to have some memes. Also, ignore the monolith. That's just, I had to move that just for a quick sec. But anyway, look at what I have screened off. So, Tau got Defender. This is where I was able to put some flayed ones just to have them in a position to do something. But from this guy, you've screened out all the way over here and all the way over here. Now, you can see we've spaced out coherency properly, 2 inches. Remember, for these guys standing up here, coherency is 2 inches horizontal, 5 inches vertical, which means that this is a legal placement for the guys in the middle. And the distance that we have just covered off is insane. We made it so that, like, the Necrons aren't putting anything down anywhere. And you have some armies in the game which are rife with infiltrator units that need to infiltrate in order to affect a game plan. If you can shut that down, the game plan can sometimes fall apart. Now, if we were wanting to block scout moves, we would obviously leave these guys here. But when we look at the Trail Shaper, he can redeploy on his data sheet his own unit, as well as another Kroot unit. And then if he has this enhancement, you can also do 3 Kroot Carnivore or Kroot Fast Stalker units, and give those units deep strike so that they can come down wherever they want. And actually, this plays into a unit that we would normally string out like this, expecting to just die if our opponent got the first turn. We can instead redeploy it, grab it, and just go, yep, we're going to put it like behind a wall. We're going to use our infiltrate abilities to have them somewhere that can affect the game, but not be maybe as hyper aggressive as they were. Or we can pick them up and put them into strategic reserves. Now, If we do it using the Kroot Shaper ability, they don't get Deep Strike, but there's no reason why we would do that. The really, really big tech is being able to use the redeploy on something like Rampages. Now, this is the Trail Shaper's data sheet ability, which can target any Kroot unit. The enhancement can only target Fast Stalkers and Carnivores, but you are allowed to use both of them. One of the things that I talked about when I had a very, very highly performing double Tiger Shark list before all the nerfs, was Cao Yon giving me a redeploy to put hammerheads in certain positions to bait my opponent and then just redeploy them and put them back to safety and control where my opponent believes they can put things. Now, in this instance, we got Rampages over on the far side. You can deploy over here and make your opponent think, oh, yeah, cool. I can put stuff safely towards the center, or I can put stuff over here, and I'll be absolutely fine. There's nothing to retaliate against me. Well, not if we pick them up and then redeploy them somewhere aggressive like this, have them able to threaten both this side and the center, while, because of Auxiliary Carter, I've put the bubble here, able to keep all of them safe with shooting that can only happen within 18 inches, which from your deployment zone is a decent distance. There's not a lot of things in the game that are going to be able to make that an actual thing and threaten 5 wound models at T6. And the big thing with this is that you can use the Trail Shaper, put him in the Kroot Fast Stalker unit. Leaders still get picked up with their bodyguard unit. So if you have a Trail Shaper, you can put them in and everybody has Deep Strike. If you have a War Shaper with Kroot Carnivores or with Fast Stalkers, they get picked up because it is a Kroot Fast Stalker unit. The leader gets all of those keywords. So he gets picked up and his unit then has Deep Strike. There is a ton that you can do with this, and while it won't always be optimal to go into a ton of Fast Stalkers and Kroot Carnivores and then Deep Strike them around the place, it does give you options, and that is something that I am a massive fan of. This is a really, really cool interaction, and shout out to Rain for being the first one in our Discord to think about that. Now, the next unit that I want to talk about is the Lone Spear, which is something that enables the next unit we're going to talk about, the Rampages, in such a massive way. When including him in the army, there's actually a lot more to his interactions than just giving rerolls to hit to the Rampages, and there's a lot of tech that we can use that allows us to be able to play the game in a way that you might not expect when you look at everything on a face value. Now, one of the big things that I want to point out here is 2 interactions. The first is the shoot and scoot, where he fires at something, then he makes a move of 6 inches. Now, where this becomes relevant is that you can actually use him to potentially get your detachment bonus twice in a turn. Let me show you. All right, so we've set up just a little thing here. We've got our Tau unit safely back here, and we've got the Lone Spear that we can use. We get him to within 9 of the monolith, and then we open up with, Sky Rays or Hammerheads or Crisis units or whatever we've got that wants to shoot into this guy with extra AP. The monolith not having an invuln save, and yes, I'm aware that Hyper Crypt you can pay for one, but if our opponent was silly and they spent their CP on Overwatch, and they're sitting on 0 CP, cool, I want to have you on the lowest save that we possibly can, especially having a 2-up save model. So we move our Lone Spear in range here, and we unload with all of our Sky Rays. Then after we unload with our Sky Rays, one of the important things for this play is that you don't just one-shot the only target in sight. He will need to be able to shoot, but we unload with Sky Rays and drops the monolith down to like 7 wounds. Then we shoot at him with the Lone Spear. Now, this is where I want to talk about our second interaction while I'm going through this Fire and Fate. The second interaction is Fanatical Convert. I've heard a ton of people talking about it lets them guide for somebody else, but one of the big things for us getting reroll value from the Lone Spear is getting them hitting as well as humanly possible. Because remember, we don't need to wound them, we don't need to do damage, we just need to hit them. And when you've got a Blast Javelin or the Kroot Long Gun, there are going to be times where you only get 1 shot. The Kroot Long Gun only has 1 shot at base. So you want to make sure that that hits in the best way possible. This says gain the for the greater good ability. That means you can guide, but you can also be guided, which allows you with a Marker Light unit to take away cover as well. So we have the Blast Javelin, which normally would go down to AP 1 with people having cover, which isn't great. We have it guided by, stealth suits, for example. Let's roll that out. So Blast Javelin, number of shots. All right, we get 2 shots, so it's a little bit of a low roll. Now, because we're guided, where normally we'd be hitting on 4s, we are now hitting on 3s, re-rolling 1s because of the stealth suit data sheet. Would you look at that? We get a re-roll into a 1 because I'm me. But This would have been 2 misses, gaining no reroll value for any other Kroot units into that monolith. If we were about to crash a Rampages squad into him, that might be real bad news bears. But we've got a hit, and now, regardless of what happens with the wound roll, he has gotten his value from his datasheet ability. For shits and giggles, I'm going to roll to wound. It's a 3, doesn't go through, whatever. But that is a perfect showcase of we got the value that we wanted. For this example, I'm just going to put a unit of 3 Kroot Rampages down. They were wanting to go into him. Now they know that they've got rerolls to hit when they do. Tower units have already finished shooting, so we shot the Kroot Lone Spear with that guiding, and then we move him 6. Now notice these Tomb Blades didn't have a Kroot unit that could see them. The Kroot Hounds we kept on the other side of the wall because we knew we were setting up for this play. We moved 3, and then we moved 3. Now, we've got a Kroot Lone Spear, again within 9, and our Star Scythes are able to shoot into this unit with the extra AP. We have just had our anti-tank go into the monolith with the extra AP, then we did a little shoot and scoot, and we've got the Kroot Lone Spear able to give us the value there. Now, another side benefit of this is the Kroot Hound's ability. While this unit is within 12 inches of one or more friendly Kroot characters, the objective control characteristic of models in this unit is 1. Now, what are the follow-on effects for this? Well, if we had, I don't know, Sabotage, this Kroot Hound unit, because actions are declared in the shooting phase, not at the start, not at the end, just in the shooting phase, you can do it anytime you want. So, while the Lone Spear is outside of 12, they can't start an action. But if he does his little shoot and scoot whatever, I'm then within 9 of the Tomb Blades, and now I'm within 12 of these Kroot Hounds, meaning that they are now OC1 and can start an action. This means that you are no longer paying a tax for these Kroot Hounds, which are all OC0, and they are only move blocking and getting your detachment rule. Now you can seat them in some very obnoxious positions and perform actions, taking the stress off your tower units, allowing them to send their firepower where it's needed and not have to spend turns doing action. Now, does any of this mean that you're always going to take Lone Spears? In my opinion, no. If you don't have Rampages, you don't take Lone Spears. There is an argument for them to do some of the tech that I just pointed out with the Kroot Hounds and everything else, but that said, there are cheaper units like the Trail Shaper, like the War Shaper, like the Flesh Shaper, which are able to give better benefits to your Kroot Carnivores or your Kroot Farstalkers. And at the end of the day, the Lone Spear's rerolls to hit aren't as valuable on non-Rampage units because they don't do enough damage. Their guns, their melee weapons, they aren't anything special, which means that reroll hits don't do anything for them. And because they can't benefit Vespid, taking 10-man squads doesn't get the value, so even though you've got special weapons and a really good base weapon, you gain no value from the Lone Spear. That changes very muchly once we start adding Rampages into the mix. Now, in one of my other videos, I spoke about Rampages, but they have been buffed to the point where now a 3 Gorilla unit is 95 points and a 6 Gorilla unit is 190. Now, I'm playing around with a bunch of different unit sizes. At the moment, I'm testing out 2 3-mans just to see how they go. But one of the big things that these Rampages offer us is counter-punch melee, which we haven't really had access to before. You start throwing into this rerolls to hit and rerolls to wound, hit from the Kroot Lone Spear and wound rerolls from the detachment stratagem, and you have a unit that can punch up surprisingly hard, especially because their datasheet ability, if you get 3 of those models in, you roll 3 dice and on 4 ups take D3 mortal wounds. This can really soften up a target that thinks it's tankier than it is, and wound rerolls put in a massive amount with a unit that is getting sustained hits 1 with full rerolls to hit, meaning that you're often going into the wound step with more hits than you had before you started. As an example, I just want to do my Rampages into the monolith. We've just charged in, so we've got 3 models in base to base with him, and this shows you this is a 95 point unit going into a 420 point unit. Now, yes, it's been wounded by our fire, but that is kind of the course that we expect. For Tower lists, we're using our long-range fire to soften things up, and usually, and you'll notice this, Tau isn't an army that just one-shots everything it looks at, but we have a lot of very, very good additive fire which whittles an opponent down and then eventually kills it, because generally speaking, we've got effective guns on everything, but we're not so massed and layering buffs that we always one-shot whatever we touch, especially when something has something like a 4-up invuln. It can be very, very swingy, but for this example, let's do our mortal wound. Okay, I get 2 out of the 3. How many do I get? I get 5 mortal wounds, taking this thing down to 2 wounds remaining. Now, all that means is the 1 Gorilla Fist attack needs to go through to kill it. So let's stack in and layer all the buffs. Now, I'm going to pay for reroll wounds. I'm not going to pay for the AP because I know that's good, and I just want to do this as a little bit of an example. But if I've got good CP economy, or I've got an Ethereal, or I've got Shadow Sun, there might be a world where we're going into this with 2 CP available. So you can see on the Rampages datasheet, we've got 4 attacks each model with the Rampages Fist, and then 3 with the Hunting Blades. So this will be 12 attacks with the Gorilla Fists. Hitting on 3s, re-rolling 6s are sustained. Okay, we got a little unlucky there, but we got 3 6s, so we leave those 2 in and add 1 dice. And now we're going in with 13 hits, 1 over the 12 attacks that we had. Now, Strength 6 is going to be 6s into the monolith, but full rerolls. Okay, it's got 3 saves. Because of AP 1, it'll be saving on 3s. Okay, it saves. Then the Riders are 3 attacks each. Rerolling. Cool. Nothing special on 6s, but they do have Lance, which means they're wounding on 5s as opposed to 6s. All right, now the Monolith has to make 6 saves. Now, so you can see, obviously, the Monolith saved a lot better than I normally do in a tournament, but this single Gorilla unit took it from 7 wounds down to 1. This is a 420-point model with a 2-up armor save and T13. And our little 95-point unit just dropped its 6 wounds. And it's not able to use its Hypercrypt ability to pick up. It will reanimate in its turn, but it either stays there and tries to fire into combat, or it has to make a fallback move. Having the Rampages isn't only a damage showcase either. Having a unit that can stage up and 18-inch lone op, so they're really hard to remove. Even when you do shoot into them, they're 5 wounds a model. That's like Custodies or Crisis level wounds per model with shield drones, which is really nice. And Crisis suits, yes, they fall apart quite quickly, but people usually, or at least in my games, have to commit something really decent to be able to take out a Crisis unit. So now I want to look at the things that we can get away with doing using this unit. And one of the things that this opens up that we never would normally consider is Heroic Intervention. Heroic Intervention is where you set up a unit so that your enemy has to make or finish a charge move within 6 of the unit. So in this case, it'd be something like this, where the shortest path is to the Cold Star commander. So they roll a charge and they come in like this. And they think, yay, I've locked down your Crisis unit. Not really. I spend 1 CP and then countercharge you. Now, when you countercharge, it says you don't get a charge bonus, and there are some people that have been arguing that this isn't like get mortal wounds or get lance or whatever. That is absolutely not the case, and GW have clarified this in the rules commentary. Not getting a charge bonus is specifically fights first. That's it. Everything else that triggers on a charge move triggers when these guys move. So at the end of my Heroic Intervention, I get to roll for mortal wounds on these guys. Now, I only have 1 model that's within engagement range of them. And bear in mind this with the Rampages, it's not if you're eligible to fight, as these guys are base to base with the guy who's base to base with somebody from the enemy unit. It is, are you within 1 inch of them? None of the others are, so I get to roll for mortal wounds. All right, I get it. They take 3 mortal wounds, and now they lose 1.5 Tomb Blades just for charging the commander in Cold Star and going for what turned out to be a bit of a greedy play. And because people aren't used to this with Tau, they are more ready to charge you in so many different instances than they would be if you were running any other detachment that doesn't include Rampages. Then the Tomb Blade unit gets to fight first, but I mean, do we care? Not really. Not really. And in this example, I've used a high value unit, but you can do this with Kroot Carnivores, with Hounds, with Stealth Suits, with a bunch of different stuff that your opponent thinks, yeah, I can get in on them. And then as soon as they do it, you go, cool, I'm going to heroically intervene you. And you get to watch their reaction as they realize just how badly they fucked up. And the best part about it is it's not a gotcha, because Heroic Intervention is a core strat. Everybody has access to it. If somebody's playing the game without having read the core rules, that's on them and not on you. The other thing that it gives us is this melee counterpunch that can stage up somewhere nice and safe and then hit an enemy unit afterwards. So in another example, if he had have staged up his destroyers here, ordinarily Tau has to get either wholly within the terrain feature or around the terrain feature to be able to shoot them. But I can stage up a unit of Rampages here. They're 95 points, so they're cheap enough that the destroyers don't want to go for them, because then they expose themselves to Crisis and Skyrays and Hammerheads and all the other big damage stuff that we've got. But now I can move my 7 inches, potentially pay for advance and charge, and then get on top of them and hit them on my terms. And so now with this move, we've just gone around, we're sitting right in front of them, and we roll a charge roll. All right, so I get a 6, which means that it looks like even my back guy is going to be able to get an engagement range. So we go like this, we go like this, we go like this, and then we roll for mortal wounds. All right, I only get 1 this time, and he only takes 1 mortal wound, which is absolutely going to happen, but then I get to fight with damage 2 swings. Now, the trade-off here is that, yes, you don't have hit rerolls, but at the same time, you can just pay for wound rerolls and potentially pay for AP as well, which on something that hits on 3s with sustained hits, you'll likely get back a number of hits equal to what you lose on the hit roll, unless you're especially unlucky. But having said that, everybody gets unlucky on everything. You have people with stories of stuff that hits on 2s with rerolls, they lose like half of their attack. But our 95-point unit gets to take a pretty massive chunk out of these destroyers and stop a unit that would otherwise be able to uppy downy and then target something else from going elsewhere. And there are a ton of armies that do not want you to crash in, like a 3-man unit having 12 attacks with the fists at damage 2 and 9 attacks with lance at damage 1. That is scary to almost any unit that I can think of in the game that's not like a really, really strong vehicle that's a full wounds and you're not really going to threaten. This unit is just really blowing me away with how much they can offer to Tau and how much they can take the pressure off by having armies that would normally just want to charge you everywhere knowing you can't do anything about it, and having to instead consider, do I want to run at some gorillas and get my face punched in? And that is our video, just a nice and quick one. Wanted to go through a little bit of tech that I have been stewing over a little bit. I know the Kroot aren't everybody's favorite thing in the world, but honestly, I think that hating a part of your own faction is something that I think a lot of Tau players need to get over, because it has been a part of our identity basically since Tau were created, and they genuinely offer a lot of things to a lot of parts of the army. Not just in Auxiliary Kata, but also in other ones where you've got cheap objective holders, Vesper doing uppy downy. There's a lot that they can offer us, and there's a lot of really, really cool things that we can do with them. I mean, can you imagine a CSM player being like, oh man, I hate demons, I don't want to take them. Demons shouldn't be a part of the lore. You know, it seems a bit silly and ridiculous, right? And obviously in these shorter videos, I can't touch on literally everything. So if there's something you've been doing with them that seems pretty cool, chuck it down in the comments. And while you're there, hit the like and subscribe button, or don't, I'm not your dad. Thank you so much to all of my patrons who make all of my videos possible. If you would like to join us and get access to the Discord, the community, and a bunch of wonderful other things, you can do so at the $5 Chasui tier or higher. If you would like to get coaching from me, you want to take a look at the Chasso or the Pantheon tier of the Patreon or YouTube membership. The Pantheon tier especially gets dedicated coaching from me all through the month, and has been really massive for pushing some of the skills of all of the people that are within that tier. Not only do they get one-on-one time, but we also do throughout the month skill sessions, hangs, all that sort of good stuff you'd expect. And with that, that's our video. I'm really, really excited using all of the stuff from the Kroot box again. And if you've got something you would like me to talk about next, check it down in the comments. See you in the next one.